Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at the crossroads of life's challenges, uncertainties, and struggles. But I am here to tell you, with unwavering faith and hope, that we do not have to face these challenges alone. There is a power greater than all our fears, our doubts, and our trials. It is the power of God, and when we let Him take over the situation, there is nothing we cannot overcome. When we try to control everything in our lives, we carry a weight far heavier than we were ever meant to bear. There is a natural inclination within all of us to fix, to manage, to control our circumstances. But the reality is that our limited understanding and strength can only carry us so far. When we choose to place our burdens in the hands of the Almighty, we acknowledge that we are not the ultimate authority over our lives. We humbly recognize that our vision is clouded, but His sight is clear, seeing not just the present, but the future as well. It is a profound act of faith to release our grip on situations that we cannot resolve on our own. Letting go does not mean abandoning responsibility or giving up. Rather, it's a recognition that we cannot handle everything alone, and that God's wisdom and power are far beyond our own. In those moments of surrender, we embrace His guidance, trusting that His way is the best way. Surrender means that we relinquish the false belief that we can control everything and allow God to direct our paths, knowing He is infinitely more equipped to navigate us through any storm. When we surrender, we stop fighting against what is out of our hands and open ourselves to the possibilities He is waiting to unfold for us. There is a deep peace in that surrender, because in that act we place our trust in the One who knows what we need before we even ask. Instead of holding on to the reins with fear, we place them in His hands with faith, knowing that His will for us is always rooted in love and purpose. Through surrender we find freedom, for it is only by releasing control that we are able to experience the true peace that comes from knowing God is in charge. It's easy to become discouraged when life doesn't go the way we expect. We make plans, set goals, and dream about the future, but then things change and we face setbacks that seem to derail us. In those moments, it's crucial to remember that God's plan for us is not only greater than our own, but it is also infinitely better. Even if we don't always understand it at the time. Believing in His plan means trusting that despite the difficulties we may face, He is orchestrating something far beyond our imagination. God sees the beginning from the end, and He knows what lies ahead in our journey, even when we can only see the next step. We might find ourselves asking, why is this happening to me? Or how can this be part of God's plan? But trust that He is never working against us. He works with us even in our challenges, molding us and shaping us for a future that is full of purpose. When we believe in God's plan, we release our own timeline and expectations. We understand that His timing is perfect, and that what we see as an obstacle or delay might actually be a stepping stone towards something greater. Sometimes what we perceive as a detour is actually God redirecting our path towards something better. A lesson, a person, an opportunity, or a transformation that wouldn't have happened had things gone the way we originally envisioned. Trusting in His plan also means trusting in His goodness. God's love for us is unshakable, and His plan is always rooted in His desire to see us grow, thrive, and become who we were always meant to be. Even in moments of pain or uncertainty, He is at work bringing beauty from ashes. The Bible assures us that God works all things together for good for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. It's a promise that no matter how dark the road may seem, His plan is one of redemption, restoration, and ultimate good. So as you face challenges and as you walk through the unknown, Remember that God's plan for you is far greater than anything you can dream for yourself. It's a plan full of hope, peace, and purpose. By believing in it, you surrender your own limited vision and trust in the one who holds the blueprint of your life. And in doing so, you open yourself to a future that is more wonderful than you could ever imagine. Stepping out in faith is one of the most powerful, yet often one of the most difficult actions we can take in our walk with God. It's easy to trust when we can see everything clearly laid out in front of us, when the path seems straight and predictable. But faith, true faith, requires us to move forward even when the road is unclear, when we cannot see what lies beyond the next step. Stepping out in faith means choosing to move forward based not on what we see, but on who we trust. Faith is not just about believing in God's promises, it's about actively embracing them and allowing them to direct our actions. It's a willingness to take a leap when everything within us screams to hold back. It's about taking that first step into the unknown, knowing that God is already there, preparing the way. When we step out in faith, we are saying, I trust you, God, even though I can't see the outcome. I trust your plan, your timing, and your goodness, even when everything feels uncertain. In stepping out, we often face fear. We fear the unknown, the possibility of failure, and the risks that come with change. But God calls us to walk by faith, not by sight. In fact, it's often in our moments of greatest fear and uncertainty that God is most at work in us, shaping us and teaching us to depend not on our own strength, but on His. When we step forward in faith, we show God that we are willing to leave our comfort zones and trust that He will lead us. It's important to remember that stepping out in faith doesn't mean we won't face challenges, nor does it mean that everything will go smoothly. The journey of faith is not always easy or without struggle, but it is in those moments of struggle that we discover the depth of God's faithfulness. When we take that first step, we may not know exactly how things will unfold, but we do know that God is with us every step of the way. When we act in faith, we also take part in the great adventure of seeing God work in miraculous ways. Often the things we are afraid to attempt are the very things that will stretch us, grow us, and reveal God's power in our lives. Whether it's trusting God in a new job, moving to a new place, or pursuing a dream you've been holding on to, stepping out in faith means you're inviting God to do something new and exciting in your life. By stepping out, you are not walking alone. God's promises are sure, and His presence is constant. So take that step, no matter how small it may seem. It might be stepping into a new chapter, trusting God with a difficult decision, or acting on a calling He has placed on your heart. Remember, stepping out in faith is not about perfection. It's about obedience. And it's in that obedience that we discover the fullness of God's plan for our lives. Prayer is one of the most profound and powerful ways we connect with God. It's not just a list of requests or a ritualistic act. It is a conversation, a sacred dialogue between you and your Creator. In the midst of life's struggles, prayer is where we find the strength to continue. When the weight of the world seems unbearable, prayer is where we draw close to the one who is never far from us. And in His presence, we find the strength we need to face whatever lies ahead. In prayer, we are reminded that we are not facing our challenges alone. God is always ready and willing to listen to our hearts. He hears every word, even the ones left unspoken. And He responds, not always with the answers we expect, but with His peace, His comfort, and His direction. When we approach Him in prayer, we acknowledge our dependence on Him, and it is in that moment of surrender that we find true strength. It is God who renews our spirit. empowers us to endure, and fortifies us for the journey ahead. There is incredible strength in knowing that the God of the universe is attentive to our every need, that He delights in hearing from us, and that He cares deeply about our concerns. In those moments when we don't know what to say or where to turn, the Holy Spirit intercedes on our behalf, bringing our deepest desires and fears before the Father. Prayer, then, is not just a means of asking for help, but a way of drawing near to God, allowing His presence to strengthen our hearts and souls. When we pray, we invite God's power into our lives. It is in prayer that we begin to see things from His perspective, where our burdens are lightened and our faith is strengthened. Prayer doesn't just change circumstances, it changes us. It aligns our hearts with God's will, helping us to understand His plan more clearly, to trust His timing more fully, and to walk forward with a deeper sense of peace. In times of fear, prayer gives us courage. In times of doubt, prayer brings clarity. In times of weakness, prayer renews our strength. And in times of joy, prayer allows us to express gratitude for God's blessings. Prayer is not just a one-way conversation. It's an intimate exchange where we listen as well as speak, and where God's voice becomes clearer with every moment spent in His presence. Sometimes when life is overwhelming, we may not even know how to pray. But the beautiful truth is that God understands our hearts even when our words fail us. Our prayers don't have to be perfect. They simply need to be honest. When we come before God with sincerity, no matter the state of our hearts, He meets us right where we are. Through prayer, we find the strength not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of challenges, knowing that with God, all things are possible. Trusting in God's faithfulness is one of the most important foundations of our Christian walk. It's the anchor that holds us steady when the storms of life try to toss us around. When everything around us feels uncertain and our world feels like it's falling apart, remembering that God is faithful allows us to find peace in the midst of chaos. His faithfulness is unchanging and unshakable, regardless of our circumstances. God's faithfulness means He will never fail us. He has proven Himself time and time again throughout history, through the lives of those who came before us and through our own personal experiences. He has kept His promises in the past, and He will continue to keep His promises today. From the moment we give our lives to Him, He is committed to seeing us through every trial, every hardship, and every joy. We can trust that He is with us, guiding us, protecting us, and providing for us no matter what challenges come our way. In moments of doubt, when we wonder whether God truly has our best interests at heart, we need only to look back at His past faithfulness to see His hand at work. Think of the countless times throughout the Bible when God remained faithful to His people even when they were unfaithful to Him. Whether it was providing for the Israelites in the wilderness, delivering them from their enemies, or fulfilling His promises through Jesus Christ, God's faithfulness has never wavered. And His commitment to us is the same. To trust in His faithfulness is to trust that God's promises are true, no matter how impossible they may seem. It's a belief that even when we can't see the end of the road, God is already there making a way for us. His faithfulness assures us that He will finish what He started in our lives. When He calls us to something, He doesn't leave us to figure it out on our own. He walks beside us, strengthens us, and gives us everything we need to succeed in His will. But trusting in God's faithfulness also requires patience. Sometimes we don't see the answers we're praying for right away, and it's easy to become discouraged. Yet God's faithfulness is not bound by our timing. He knows what we need and when we need it. and His timing is perfect. When we trust His faithfulness, we choose to rest in the knowledge that He is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see the whole picture. God's faithfulness is not just about what He does for us. It's about who He is. He is faithful because He is love. And His love for us is constant. His faithfulness is not conditional upon our actions or our worthiness. He remains faithful even when we falter, even when we don't understand why things are happening the way they are. Trusting in His faithfulness means that no matter what we face, we can stand firm, knowing that He will never leave us or forsake us. His faithfulness is a promise that we can cling to every day of our lives. So, in times of uncertainty, let your heart rest in the certainty of God's faithfulness. When doubt creeps in, remind yourself of His past provision. When fear takes hold, cling to the truth that God is faithful to complete the good work He has begun in you. Trust in His faithfulness, and let that trust empower you to walk forward with confidence, knowing that no matter what comes, God is always with you, and He will see you through. There is a deep, unshakable peace that comes only from being in the presence of God, a peace that goes beyond understanding and a peace that the world cannot offer. In the midst of the chaos and noise of life, His presence is a refuge, a safe place where our hearts can find rest. We often search for peace in external circumstances, in achievements, or in relationships. But true, lasting peace is found when we draw near to God and allow His presence to fill our hearts and minds. When we experience peace in God's presence, it is not the absence of trouble, but rather the presence of His comfort and assurance in the midst of it. Life will always have its difficulties. There will be trials, heartaches, and challenges that we must face. Yet God promises to be with us in those moments, and it is in His presence that we find the strength to endure. As we spend time with Him, He fills us with a peace that helps us navigate through the storms of life without being overwhelmed by fear or anxiety. This peace that comes from being in God's presence is not fleeting. Unlike the temporary relief we may find in distractions or coping mechanisms, God's peace is eternal. It doesn't depend on how well our day is going, how successful we are, or how much we have in the bank. His peace is a gift that transcends our circumstances and reaches into the depths of our souls. It calms our hearts when the world around us feels like it's spinning out of control. To experience peace in His presence also means allowing God to heal the wounds in our hearts. Sometimes we carry burdens that weigh us down, past hurts, regrets, and fears, and we may try to hide them, even from ourselves. But when we come before God with open hearts, He meets us in those places of pain and brings peace where there was once turmoil. His presence is a balm for our brokenness, a comfort for our grief, and a restoration for our weary souls. He does not condemn us. He loves us, meets us in our weaknesses, and brings peace into the places that need it most. The peace that God offers is not only for our minds, but also for our hearts. It allows us to trust Him more deeply and surrender our fears, knowing that He is in control. It allows us to release the need to manipulate our circumstances or rely on our own strength. Instead, we can rest in the truth that God is sovereign, and He has already gone ahead of us to prepare a way. Moreover, experiencing peace in God's presence leads us to a place of contentment. We realize that we do not need to chase after the things of this world to feel fulfilled. When we are in His presence, we find that everything we truly need is already in Him. His love, His grace, His guidance, and His peace. These are the treasures that fill our hearts and satisfy our deepest longings. In the quiet moments of prayer, in times of worship, or simply in stillness before God, we open ourselves to the peace that He freely offers. As we seek Him, we discover that peace is not just something God gives. It is who He is. Jesus Himself is called the Prince of Peace, and when we draw close to Him, we are enveloped by that peace, no matter what we are facing. So, take time to be in God's presence, for it is there that you will find the peace that surpasses all understanding. Let it guard your heart and mind, and let it be a reminder that no matter what comes your way, God's presence is always with you, offering a peace that never fades and never fails. As we stand here today, I want to leave you with a simple but profound truth. When we allow God to take over our situations, we find a peace, strength, and hope that the world cannot offer. His love is steadfast, His promises are sure, and His presence is a refuge that brings rest to our souls. We are not meant to walk through life alone, carrying the weight of our challenges on our own shoulders. God invites us to surrender our burdens to Him, trust in His plan, step out in faith, pray for His guidance, and lean on His faithfulness. As we do, we will experience His peace in a way that changes everything. It's a peace that gives us courage to move forward, a peace that steadies us when the winds of life howl, and a peace that fills us with the assurance that we are never alone. So, as you go from this place today, remember, no matter what you're facing, God is already there, working in ways you cannot yet see. Trust in Him, surrender your struggles, and allow His presence to fill you with the peace that only He can give. With God leading the way, there is nothing that can defeat you, no obstacle too great to overcome. God bless you, and may His peace go with you always.